Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It was a very long evening last night. I don't know. I haven't seen many of those who were here at the networking party, but it was a brilliant event and it lasted a while. Yes, there's a lot of stuff I want to tell you and talk to you about. The first thing is perhaps a little apology for the title. This is not the typical German arrogance that you would expect, as in My Beautiful TTO is the best thing ever, but it is actually a reference to a movie that most of you probably have not seen because it's from 1985, where most of you were not born. And the movie is called actually My Beautiful Laundrette, and it's also not German, it's English, from a chap called Fries. And the similarity of this title and the title of the film is that it is actually not about a laundrette, and this is not really only about the TTO, but more about technology transfer as such and founding companies. And yesterday we heard a lot about career building. I was quite interested in kind of listening to the talks yesterday, where the chances of young scientists are supposed to be or will be, and I haven't heard one thing was that you were told that the truth and the future is in America, and everybody's got to go to America to build their future and career. That's certainly true to an extent, but I think Europe is not so bad after all, and I think you've mentioned that in particular. Admittedly, the UK, for example, the field of technology transfer is probably at least 5 to 10 years, I wouldn't say 25, but at least 5 to 10 years ahead of the rest of Europe. And also, I believe that going to other European countries like the UK, like Germany, is a way to build an international career and a very good start. I was myself not in the USA as a student. I was in the UK, and it didn't do me badly. So I think I did well for myself. So I would like to tell you about the Senior, which is the shop I'm heading as a CEO. We were founded in 2001, and the company is a classic technology transfer company and has a few particular points which go a lot into what we just have heard, because the greatest problem of most places, no matter which they are, is actually critical mass. And it is something that I've also noticed yesterday, and I've seen in most talks, that this is something that you're struggling here in the Czech Republic and even in Prague. And I've seen very much the same thing in other European countries and other technology transfer offices and universities. It's everywhere the same, that institutions are basically competing about money and forget that they would be much stronger and much more efficient if they would work together. The mission of Stein, which is a GmbH, does not belong to a university but to a foundation. It's the same as in most technology transfer offices. We save and protect the ideas of scientists, and we advance inventions and ideas into application. This is the one and only main goal of a technology transfer office. Of course, you want to earn money with it, if you can, because there's a fair exchange for what you've got to offer to industry, but it is not what it is about. And I think this is something, it's a historic lie that you hear again and again, because universities and experts promise to those who give the money that technology transfer will be cost efficient and that they will be able to earn money with it. In more than 90% of the cases, that is actually wrong. Technology transfer offices as single offices in small units will not be able to earn money. there are always these great exceptions, and I think when you visit the hall here, lost orientation, but there is this kind of cubicle thing with holly on it, and this is always the great example that is quoted how technology transfer works. But it is like winning a lottery. There are so many, even if you are efficient, there are hundreds and hundreds of cases that don't work like that, even if you have that idea. So it's a connection of thorough work, of a bright idea, and of more than a decade of very consequent development, in which you shouldn't make too many mistakes that will lead to that singular success. And to quote that as this is how it should be and that's the rule, that is simply wrong. It just does not work like that. That shouldn't be an excuse. You have to work efficient and you have to be good as technology transfer office. And there's a whole box of tools that you've heard actually quite a few of in the last talk that make a technology transfer office work well. But for any given university, the probability of hitting the jackpot is the odds are against the university. It may certainly technology transfer in some within a large region, and I would say that, and we've heard that, like Wales or like Bavaria or like the Czech Republic, you can make technology transfer a business, but you won't be able to do it if you stay separate. So, of course, technology transfer, people don't like to hear that, because if you are at the university, you've got a nice cozy seat with sort of 2 or 3 technology transfer people, and of course it would be more efficient and might actually need less people if you would use the synergies. And unfortunately, the selfishness of the institutions is such that this won't happen very easily, but it would be the better way. This is just an introduction slide, and it contains loads of information that is actually not very important in detail. But what it does tell you is that the blue things here are large pharmaceutical companies. This is about new drugs. And the rest of the column is small biotechs, academia, whatever. And what you can see is that most innovation in the pharmaceutical industry today actually comes from without and not from the R&D departments of the companies. And this is there's loads of statistics on that, but it is a trend over the last 2 decades that still external research is gaining in importance. What does it mean? That the government, which the universities are usually under, has a duty of making the process of to get ideas to application efficient for the sake of their own economy and of their own future. It is something that is not seen because everybody wants to earn money with technology transfer, but it is the motor of economy, of national economies, and the pharmaceutical industry is an important business. So, you see I'm kind of preying on the point of critical mass, and so we are a quite unusual technology transfer office. We only do life science for the reasons, that has historic reasons, because when we started we wanted to be as efficient as possible, and if you have to serve 10 different subjects, you will not be efficient and you will not have experts that can actually tackle the tasks that are put in front of them. So we have chosen in 2001 to build a life science technology transfer office that would work all over Germany. This is what it looks today. The red dots are the offices that we have. In some places we have actually 2 offices, and this is already one of the largest disadvantages of that system, because these offices are in part very small. They are usually connected to scientific campuses. So you can see the research institutions that are distributed all over Germany, which we work for. I don't know if you know anything about the German academic systems, but we have universities. There are about 400 in Germany, and then we have 4 associations that are in different parts, in different fields of the value chain. So the most classic basic research institute, you probably all know, is Max Planck Association, with about, I believe, 60 research institutes all over Germany, and they do only basic research. Then there is Leibniz, which is about 80 institutions that are kind of a bit further advanced in that value chain. Then there is Helmholtz, which is always dealing, Helmholtz Association, with about 20 institutes that is trying to tackle major questions of humanity. So they are going towards applied research, but they're not really yet applied research. And then at the far end, directly at applied research, you find Fraunhofer, which is also quite a big name. The largest of those associations is actually the Helmholtz Association, with 25,000 people altogether, and in these 20 research institutes. So we work with 5 life science institutes of the Helmholtz Association, and every year a new one came. So now we are together working for 20 research institutions and 2 medical universities, Charité, which I believe is the biggest in Europe, and the Medical School of Hanover. Why do we do that? Because it gives us access to a critical mass, and because it gives our clients the security of working with a team of about 40 people that know what they are doing, that are experts through all ages. So I believe you were right in saying that it's important to have access to young people that are at the forefront of technology. But for example, we find that for the negotiation process and for the equity business, we have most of our people are above 40, because this is something where it helps to have a certain amount of experience. And the people that we employ for our office, that's another reason why we have a private structure and don't put it within the university, are actually people that have experience in technology transfer, or in industry, or in venture capital. So I've employed somebody from a venture capital fund, which is a quite expensive sport. We also have employed about 3 or 4 people from large pharmaceutical companies, and from biotech, and another 3 or 4 from biotechs, and we have a few MBAs and analysts and so on. So the level of expertise and knowledge in the company is very high. That's a good reason to have a private organization. But with a private organization, of course, you have one problem. How do you get access to all those universities? Because they wouldn't give all their inventions, or they wouldn't allow you to work with their inventions if they wouldn't be sure that if it's all going into private pockets. So how we solve that is you belong to a foundation. And the founders of the foundation are actually our clients. I have a slide for that somewhere. But sorry, I wanted to kind of go through that quickly. No, I don't have to. Just get on with it. I've noticed that not everybody is from a technology transfer office. Actually, most people are not, to my. So we have heard a little bit, or quite a bit, what the technology transfer offices are actually doing. And you can see here, I've put that into grey and a bit of darker spots. This is everything we basically do in the company. And it starts with just giving lessons or lectures like this, where we ask people, where we inform them about patenting before they publish, and how technology transfer works in principle, what options there are, and so on and so forth. Then, of course, we have technology scouts that identify the inventions. They talk to the scientists, they look at the publication, know what people do, and try to contact them before they publish to protect their ideas. We assess commercial potential, so we tried exactly what you do at your university, that is getting a professional portfolio that is up to industry standards. We support the patenting process, which means that we do not patent ourselves. That is done by patent agents because they just can do that better than we can, and probably to an extent cheaper. We manage the IP portfolios and develop commercial exploitation strategies. Of course, we have to develop projects, and this is something that this is today the most important task, because projects are not at the inflection point for investments. What you find is early stuff that is actually not usable for anything. It's a nice idea, and if you're lucky, you recognize that it is actually a good idea, but it's so far away from industry or from venture capital or from any other investors that you have to incubate it for another few years. So this is perhaps our biggest task today, to develop projects. We negotiate, we prepare contracts for intellectual property, which is, we have got, for example, 3 lawyers in the company that do all that, and then this is the dark spots is where the commercial exploitation process starts. Our business model is quite simple. All the grey stuff we charge for. So our clients have to pay if they want their invention scouted and protected and so on. And the commercial exploitation bit we do on our own costs. This is quite a good situation for our clients, for the universities, because you never know how long the commercial exploitation process takes, and you never know if it is successful. So basically we take between 20 and 25% of all the revenues for our clients. That sounds a lot, but by the end of the day you shouldn't forget that about 95% of the deals we do are loss-making for us. Because for university, 10,000 euros or 50,000 euros are quite nice to have, and we have exclusive access to our clients' IP, but they expect that we do these small deals. But if I get 20% of a 50,000 euro deal, that would be 10,000, and I have to work for it 2 or 3 months with 2 people on it. So that doesn't work out for us. What does work out is that through the access to the critical mass, because we have so many clients and so many inventions, every 3 years we make a big deal. This is the bitter truth. We make quite a lot of deals altogether, but this is not every year that we have to make a sustainable, good deal. And also, there is a lag between the point in time where we make the deal and where the revenues come in, which is between 5 and 10 years. Just to add on the topic of critical mass, these instruments, lead discovery centers, something that you need when you develop drugs. First you need a lead. So this is something where the academic research already stops or stopped. So you have to have access to a lead discovery. You have an incubator, access to an incubator, or to several incubators actually. We have our own tool which we call the Spinnovator, which is a development tool for young companies. We have a company which we hold 70% in, which is called Vaccine Project Management for historic reasons. But what they really do is they do drug development up to the clinical phase 1, where they deliver a complete file that they can give to the institution that kind of looks at the drug before it can enter a clinical phase. We have connections through our clients to clinical study centers. And all that is, of course, also a function that's only worthwhile building when you have critical mass. It always boils down to that thing. If you develop 1 or 2 ideas a year, you can't build this machinery. So connecting all that is essential. So this was what you also mentioned when you talk to industry. They usually don't come if you've got 3 patent applications a year in their sector of interest. They want to come if you've got something to offer. So we at the moment offer in the life science area altogether more than 700 technologies, most of which are, more than half of which are patented, and they're all on therapeutics and diagnostics or lab tools, but also we count as life science the medical technology sector. And then we of course have a lot of stuff that is actually not patented, but is quick money, like all kinds of lab tools, vectors, animal models, and antibodies that make a few 100,000 or actually about 1 million per year, but they're not really substantial in single deals. So what you can see here, this is just showing the last 5 years, and this year we've already are, for example, in the revenues above 10 million euros in terms of licensing income. But this is what comes out, and this is what makes the company sustainable. And so we make between 7 and 10 million euros usually in terms of licensing fees or in terms of exits. We don't really distinguish between those two because in my opinion a startup company is a lot of work. But it's only a special kind of, but we also license the technology into there. So by the end of the day, and it's very often we do take equity, some don't anymore. And yesterday somebody mentioned you shouldn't take equity within the university. I couldn't agree more. I think in particular in the health sector, you have to have very good corporate governance if you want to take equity as a university. Because for example, in a medical school, it's hard to do clinical trials for a drug where you hold equity in. It's basically impossible, and in part can be criminal for the people, for the founders, if the people that have equity are at the same time doing the clinical trial. So that is so to have a tool for holding equity is important, because venture capitalists, for example, expect from their companies and the other equity holders to react within a day or two. They don't want to hear, our next council meeting is in 6 months' time, and then we can tell you if you are interested in joining the financing round or not. That just doesn't work. So there are loads of reasons why you wouldn't want to hold equity yourself. And for example, we hold the equity and make the equity decisions for the institutions we work with. So we found about 2 or 3 venture capital finance companies per year, altogether probably more if you don't take the ones that have private capital in them. And we make about 40 to 80 revenue carrying agreements. And that's what I told you before. That sounds quite a lot. That means basically more or less more than 1 deal a week. But in terms of how much they carry revenues, of the 40, 39 don't bring very much money, at least not into a senior. So we have a number of drugs now in the market. That's also a function of critical mass. One of them is the cancer therapy Blincyto, which I will tell you a little bit more about, because it's also an example for a spin-off. What you might have heard or might not have heard, that this is now a product by Amgen, anti-cancer antibody, that came originally from a company in Munich, Micromet, that was sold for 1.2 billion euros to Amgen about 4 years ago. We have another product now, a number of diagnostic tests. We used to have a BSE test, but BSE is not so fashionable anymore, so we still have the test, but it doesn't carry many revenues anymore. We have a biomarker which brings quite a lot of money for the stratification of patients with MS. Then We have here, you can see an ELISA for chikungunya fever. Also in the medical technology sector, we have a nebulizing technology, or not we have, but actually we had a spin-off that kind of produced that product and was sold successfully. This is the second example I will tell you about as a spin-off. And we also have in the food sector a few things like a bitter blocker that helps you to mask, for example, in Coke, the bitter stuff that you find in sweeteners, artificial sweeteners. That's also, you see I'm coming back to the topic of critical mass because this is what I want you to take home today. You will not have 40 or 50 licensing partners if you have 2 ideas per year. So to have access into these companies, you do need every year 10, 20, 30, 40 ideas. And so I believe that we have licensing contracts with all major companies worldwide. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned critical mass today. And this was a photo that I found somewhere in Italy. I don't know if it doesn't really fit into that slide at all, but I did like that it said critical mass on this little thing there. It gives you visibility to industry because it is one point of access on a more or less national level. It gives you the opportunity to create a substantial portfolio. You can use your resources, your staff, your money efficiently, and you have a much higher chance of making a valuable deal, because I think those of you who are in the technology transfer business, and I think there are about 3 or 4 people that I know are, if you haven't made a pharma deal, if you have a record of pharma deals with a company, it's easy to make the next one. If you don't have that record, the chance that you make a good deal is remote. I put that slide in because I wanted to show how this could work. And what you could see here is how this could work also in an environment here, because I think the principle would be very similar. You have a number of research institutes that found a foundation. In our case, it is a Life Science Foundation, a non-for-profit organization. And that owns a company. So 100% of Asenium are owned by the foundation. It's got loads of advantages to have this foundation, because of course you could have the founders could own equity in the company directly. But I've seen quite a few technology transfer offices that have tried that, and they usually fail, because if you have 3, 4, 5 or 10 different masters, in our case we have 10 founders, they have different interests in detail, and they will tear apart the technology transfer office. Because how do you want to take a decision, whatever I do this, and don't do this idea, develop yours, there's, we want to invest the money, but not in that of the University of Regensburg or whatever. So to avoid that, you need a filter. That is essential. It's got, of course, to have the foundation also advantages in terms of tax and money distribution. So we have basically several sources of income in the business models. 2 of you heard about already. They are basically, you get 20% of licensing agreement, of the deals, of the licensing agreements between the research organizations, which is the holder of the IP, and the industry partner. So that is one. Then we get the consultancy from our clients, from the founders basically, but also from other organizations. And the third one is, we own equity in 20 companies at the moment. And yes, the equity business is a difficult one, because it's like the licensing business, very interesting but mostly pointless, because it doesn't generate much income. Most companies have not generated income for us. For the most different reasons. Some companies' ideas just didn't work. We heard the statistics yesterday. Some companies did work, but we were washed out and diluted so far that we are beyond recognition. So the company sold for $1 billion, but we had only 0.0001 or 4 shares left after the dilution process. That was €16.28 after deduction of costs for the share transaction. So some ideas work. They employ the people, the offices, whatever they have, 5, 10, 20 people, but they just can't make a trade sale with those. So you sit on that equity, and in the end, we sometimes just give the equity, return it to the founders for free, because or at cost basically, because we want to get rid of the work of being in that company as a stakeholder, but we don't earn money. We went through about 40, 50 companies by now, and we made 4 successful exits. So it's about 10%. Those who are at home in the equity business know that this is not a very good result, and VC wouldn't survive that way, because you would need at least 40 or 50% to survive or earn a little bit of money in. But then you have to not forget the technology transfer office in the feeding chain, because we are kind of very much under the grassroots level. We work with the ideas and accompany those until they find an investor. So the investor is already has basically, we've managed the investor's risks. That's where our work and value lies. So I believe that this is a system that works. If we earn money with equity in a spin-off, the money goes back into a senior because we are holding the shares, and then we give the proceeds into the foundation, and the foundation distributes as research grants into the research organization where the spin-off came from. So they get that back as research money. So that's a quite elegant way of doing that. The critical mass also gives you the opportunity to do things. One is our Spinnovator, our development project, which used to have money, and we're just building a second fund with the Spinnovator, but it's also a team to get projects to investment readiness level. We have, together with Max Planck Innovation, which is the technology transfer office of Max Planck, we have a something called Biotech Network Shop, where we have once a year we meet founders and people that want to found companies and coach them for 2 days in a place away from their own environment. And we have the BioBarrier, which is basically a fair for companies and for technology transfer offices. We used the BioBarrier, when we did it the first time, it was basically our little fair where we showed what nice technologies we had in industry. And then after about a year, we noticed, we don't have any ideas left, we couldn't do a Bavaria too. So we invited other technology transfer offices to join us, and after 2 other German technology transfer offices to join us, and after 2 years, there were not sufficient ideas in sourcing there for industry to come. So we now have a kind of put it on a European level. So we invite technology transfer offices from Europe to present the best ideas. We have a review committee that selects these ideas, and they're presented in a 1-day fair to about 150 people, 180 people from industry. Oh, yes, that's a slide. There's a web page if you're interested as technology transfer office to join there. I think the next one is in May. But so now we're coming to the second part, which is on commercial exploitation. And I think that is perhaps even more relevant for those of you who are actually looking what they're going to do in the future. Because I believe if you have a proper toolbox for startups, you can make startup work. They might not earn you very much money, but I listened yesterday to the pitches, and then I was told off for asking improper questions on the commercial exploitation. But I was interested what toolbox is and how you accompany young researchers if they have ideas to the inflection point of investment. What does the university do? Do you have a proper corporate governance, for example, that gives them, if they want to start something, a return right after 5 years or up to 5 years, where they can return actually into the organization if they fail with their company? Do you offer them seed funding? Do you offer them coaching? Do you have an interim manager? Do you have interim managers that can help those people to develop their ideas to the next stage, and all those things? So I think that is quite important. And I think I just want, before I tell you the examples themselves, I want to tell you where the problems lie and why we still have a seed gap. And even in the UK, that problem is not fully covered. Of course, there's no way that academia or venture capitalists can provide the whatever 1 to 2 billion that are needed to develop a drug. But then this is a 10 to 15 years process. There's no need for that, because this is the work of the pharma companies. But the real problem is, the one that was mentioned several times, is that you have an idea, you might even have an application for that idea or invention, you might have even protected it, but that doesn't mean that anybody wants to pick it up. Because it's so far away from the market, and so far away from the proof that it actually works, and the risk is so high that the companies don't want to pick it up. And I think you can show that quite nicely in a proper mathematical fashion. And that is, if you think that the risk profile of an invention from academia is usually the odds that something that works in a cell line actually will hit the market one day as a drug, is about less than 1 in 1,000, depending on where you have this entrance point. A company that takes external projects like Johnson & Johnson and other large companies, they take a maximum of 200 to 300 projects, external projects, into the company at a time. So this is what they can manage within their corporations. So you need, if you want 1 or 2 or 3 hits in that, the risk profile has to be obviously in the area of 1 in 100, and this is where they get interested. If it's so you have odds that have to be less than 1 in 100, and then you're in business. And this is where you have to get your stuff through within the academic context. Of course, your research is not there to develop products, and will not be there. Once a paper is published, the academic interest is usually gone, and then you need instruments to develop on. So that's a natural gap that is there. So also I think I can see this point, the cultural challenges for your research versus thinking from the end how to get your product. They are there, and I don't think they're cultural, they're just in the nature of the beast. A university is supposed to make good research and disseminate knowledge, gain and disseminate knowledge, and that's how it is. And you need an instrument that is close to university, but it doesn't have to be the university itself, that develops, that kind of fills that gap. And that has to be the Technology Transfer Office. And now you see why it is impossible to deliver this gap from within the university. So I wanted to tell you about examples. Now this here is the one I've mentioned before. That was a company that was founded ages and ages ago. This is a very bad example for technology transfer, but it's not that untypical, because you can see it started probably 1997, and that's a long time ago. And the company was founded at the Helmholtz Center in Munich with the idea of doing of measuring what drugs do within the lung and in the body. And so the company was founded in 1998, and we licensed in the patents that were from 1997, and the patents were never very important. I think altogether we made from the license deal 5,000 euros in the whole history of the company. We had 10% of equity in that company. In 2000, they started to develop basically a product inhalation instrument, or several. One is shown here on the right, and that's when the company took off. And they didn't have any venture capital by that time. And actually, we, as Technology Transfer Office, gave the company a loan of 200,000 euros, which wasn't very clever because it was from our tax money, so it wasn't a very good way of investing money. And the tax man uses that investment, treats it like an investment in a Siemens share. So if you lose it, you've lost it. But the 200,000 actually cost you nearly 600,000 because it's from tax money. So it's very kind of, we weren't very professional at the time when we did that. But anyway, so at one point they had to split the company into two companies. But because they measured it, on the one hand, they measured the drugs distribution from large pharmaceutical companies within the lung. And on the other hand, they developed products from that knowledge, and the company thought, you must be mad because you're taking our data and kind of develop your own products from that. They were very happy with that, understandably. So they split it in two companies. One was called Innomed, the other one was called Activero, and we had then 10% in both companies. They founded a subsidiary in the US, which is quite an important thing to do. And in 2009, they actually got about 50 million capital into the company. So very late in the cycle. And then we were, of course, diluted. And then a typical thing that if you're not that experienced in venture capital, we had an additional financing round. So there was more company put into the startup or into this company, but that money wasn't needed. But in the financing contracts, it said we can invest so much money, and because they had a so-called liquidation preference, so they get more money back, if they invest more money, they just did that anyway, even if the company didn't need it anymore. So that's one of the tricks that you have to kind of learn, and so we were diluted again. In 2014, a British company, Vectura, bought for 130 million, that's a published deal, so I can talk about it. The company, and we still had at least a single-digit equity in it. I think we had between 2 and 3%, which was quite a bit of money, and everybody was very happy. In particular, the founder, who still owned more than, I think, 20 or 25% of that company when it was sold. And this is another example, and it's a deal I quite like because in our books it says we founded the company in 2013, in October, and we sold it in March 2014. So there was an incubation, and we sold it for pretty much 10 million euros into Medigene, a stock market company. But that's only a part of the truth. Of course, it didn't take 3 or 4 months to develop that company. It took us also more or less pretty much more than a decade. Just we were successful in stopping the company to be founded, because that's a classic mistake, and I don't think that was mentioned at all, but a lot of companies are founded much too early. It's got loads of disadvantages of founding too early. One is that you get public money usually for the first 2 or 3 years after you found a company. So soft money you will use soft money before you have a proof of concept, but you will need that money later, because leveraged money is always good, and a lot of the funding is leveraged. So I get 1 million from a private company, and that is leveraged with soft money, 1 million by public grant. So don't found too early. Of course, universities quite like founding because you get political brownie points if you found a company. So this is an inherent conflict. That's also why it's good to have an external technology transfer office, because I don't give a toss what politicians want. I don't have to. And the university can say, oh, they are doing it, it wasn't us. So there's a certainly we don't do anything that the university wouldn't want, because they pay us. So you don't bite that hand easily. But you have a choice, and there is a filter in between, and that also helps in having it externalized. And so what you see, we had a spin-off idea already in 2007, and we drafted the concept, and then in 2011, for example, the company, or before it was a company, they attracted a large, or a relatively large scientific grant of 500,000 euros, with the objective to, at the end of that grant, found a spin-off. And they had a coach, Christian Team, who is the Micromet founder, and he coached them, which we know him because we have a contract with Micromet, a licensing contract, and he's the chap that sold Micromet, the Munich Martin Street startup, for 1.2 billion to Amgen. So he coached this the founders team for free into how they should make the business concept. And so this is something that helped them immensely. And then we founded the company. We took, I think, 5% equity. There was no dilution, so we got that directly within that deal. As I've got no minute anymore, about 30 seconds only, all I want to tell you about this third spin-off is that there are now new deals. Venture capitalists are reduced in their meaning for our spin-offs. We work more and more with family offices, business angels and single persons, which is difficult to access, also works via critical mass. This one is by a Swiss consortium. We founded the company in Switzerland, and the good thing about the company is that we will not get diluted, because the stocks will be traded within the company. So we sell our shares cheaper back to into the company, and they are sold, if money is needed in the company, to another investor within the consortium, and the gap between, so that the income gap, so we sell whatever for 1 million, and somebody else buys it for 2 million, and 1 million comes into the company. So it's a quite good system of not getting diluted, but of course you lose stock directly, but you get money for it. So that's a quite new system, and we have the second company now in foundation with that system, and so far it works pretty well. And that one is just entering clinical phase 1, and if they survive that, then we hope that we are going for an attractive exit. These are spin-offs we have equity in at the moment, but with that I want to summarize and tell you it's all about critical mass, and I hope that you find a solution where you can have a technology transfer office that pulls the immense sources that I've seen yesterday in a clever organization. Thank you for being here and listening to me. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We have taken all the time. It doesn't matter, because you were already nervous that Bavaria will be, and the whole Germany will be actually set out of the map of Europe. We have space for one question, one answer, and the rest will take over the coffee. Okay, so any comment, question? Okay, we have one. No. One, two. Okay, two female questions. Okay, to be.
Hi, Jenna from IRCB. I have a question. Well, first of all, thank you for the inspiring speech. You mentioned that in TTO, it's very important to have an experience, that most of your employees are about 40. But at the same time, you agree that young scientists are needed in that area. So I would like to ask if there's a place for young scientists in TTO then, and in which way could we be valuable to you? Or to TTO in general.
I almost for words, just for the microphone. Yeah, but usually when the stuff starts to work, because they're actually quite young, so technology scouts quite like to have once they're freshly done with university. So we have about 20% of our staff is some people that go through our own technology transfer office and learn it from there. Also, we do have always students that work as kind of as junior analysts. So we have basically two levels. One is an entry level, where somebody can make a career through and within Steinium. And we also take students and exchange students and so on and participate in programs like that, where we help to contribute to education and career development. Thank you.
Is German language nice to have or must to have to join like TTO in Germany? And is there any TTO in Dresden or even better Zittau?
The Technical University of Dresden, did you ask that?
If there is any in Dresden TTO.
What?
If there is a technology transfer office in Dresden.
Okay, yes, then I did get actually the first line. Yes, there is. The Technical University of Dresden has a technology transfer office. I don't want to say more to that. And there's loads of room for improvement, so I'm sure there's a good career path for you. The other part of the question, Deutsche Sprache. Die Deutsche Sprache. That's a very good point. We always have, at the moment, we have an American and a British person. The American person comes from UCL Technology Transfer Office and speaks German very well. So that was the problem. The Brit that we have at the moment was working in Canada at the Canadian Cancer Research Unit developing companies. And he was exactly the person I needed for the spinnovator. But we have a language problem, so I've sent him now. I think he started in June, and I want him to speak German so he can understand what it is all about by mid of next year. So you don't have, if you want somebody, it doesn't matter if they speak German or not, but by the end of the day, they have to. Germany is very proud of its own language, like probably most countries, not quite as bad as France, but probably as bad as many. So I'm afraid, for example, grant applications are more or less always in German. So if you can't read them, you have a problem in scouting and so on. So it is important. At the end of the day, I think you don't get around learning the language. But you do have, for example, students that don't speak perfect German, and that also works very well.
Thank you.